However, the visitor didn't waste their words with Si Xia and used more force in tightening the rope around him, intent on choking him to death. Si Xia's face swelled with blood. He pushed the person off of him and took the chance to flee from the room. "Let's see where you'll run." The person chuckled. They immediately pursued Si Xia. Before Si Xia could run more than a few steps outside, the person in black caught up to him and blocked his path. "Just what grievances and hostilities do you have with me?" Si Xia asked the person in the back. "Enough rubbish." The person in black snorted and ruthlessly struck Si Xia with the hoe they brought from the house. Si Xia reacted rather fast and dodged in time. Soon, the person in black dashed towards Si Xia and choked him by the neck. Si Xia's arms swung madly in apparent panic and his eyes turned bloodshot. "Die," the person in black shouted coldly. At that moment, Si Xia finally stopped moving and viciousness appeared in his bloodshot eyes. "I'm rather curious." Si Xia stared at the mysterious person. "Just who are you? Why are you here to take my life for no reason?" As Si Xia spoke, he gently tapped his finger. The mysterious person immediately released Si Xia like they were struck by lightning and staggered backward. "Punk, I didn't expect you to have hidden so deeply." The person in black examined Si Xia for a few seconds and turned to leave. "Since you're here, it won't be so easy for you to leave now. What do you say?" The corners of Si Xia's lips curled up with a nefarious smile. Si Xia was extremely fast and grabbed the person in black by the back of their clothes almost instantly. The person in black turned around at once and both of them reached for the other person simultaneously. "It's you." Si Xia snatched the mask, concealing the face of the person in black, and turned pensive when a pretty and sweet face was exposed. This woman was none other than the leader of Heavenly Owl, Haitang. As for Haitang, she was attacking randomly but accidentally scratched off a piece of skin underneath Si Xia's eyes. To put it precisely, this piece of skin didn't belong to Si Xia or any living creature. This was a piece of manufactured skin used to disguise someone's face and was very, very thin. The tactile feeling in one's hands was very soft and no different than human skin. If this coincidence hadn't happened, who would have expected this to be underneath Si Xia's eye? A scar that had been hidden for who knew how long underneath Si Xia's eye was revealed. When it was paired with his nefarious smile, it would make one shiver unwittingly. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. "EU, come, tell me, why do you want to kill me?" Si Xia questioned chillingly. Haitang didn't say anything as she looked at Si Xia. "Since you won't talk, then never speak again." Si Xia snorted. He seemed to have the speed of a gale and seized the escaping Haitang. In his right hand was the hoe. Si Xia slammed the hoe toward Haitang's head. Haitang frowned deeply. Si Xia's strength completely exceeded her expectations. He was seriously too fast, and Haitang could even feel the wind produced from the hoe slashing across the air. Suddenly, a figure flashed between the two people. Bam! A giant noise rang out. Yi Wanwan blocked Haitang and caught the hoe. Haitang was most likely sent there by Yi Wanwan to purposely test him. President of the Martial Arts Union, long time no see. A comment came from Yi Wanwan when she saw the ferocious scar at the corner of Si Xia's eyes. The Martial Arts Union's president? Haitang stared at Si Xia in shock. Si Xia was actually the president of the Martial Arts Union? Yi Wanwan was initially only suspicious about all the abnormalities that Si Xia displayed but never expected Si Xia to be the president of the Martial Arts Union. She was simply too familiar with this scar. It was caused by the claws of a wild wolf. Si Xia stared at Yi Wanwan and mulled over his thoughts for a long time before the corners of his lips turned up. His hoarse voice rang out, "Ha! Ah, worryless nya. You really are very smart. If you came here to test me yourself, I would be able to determine your figure with one look, so, you had this woman come and test me. Not bad. You've improved." Yi Wanwan shook her head. I've long since heard that the president of the martial arts union's skills in disguise are unparalleled in this world, so it'd simply be too easy for you to hide a mere scar. However, Xia, I didn't expect it to be you. You really know how to surprise me. Interesting, worryless Nya, very interesting. But I'm still very curious. I thought I hid flawlessly, so how did you discover me? Xia asked. Can you tell me? Flawlessly? You thought your disguise was flawless? Yi Wanwan couldn't help but snort. Just who gave him the confidence? He was clearly full of mistakes but thought he was flawless. Xia, I have to say that you disguised yourself very ingeniously as a whole, including our interactions in China. Unfortunately, you solely focused on the whole and overlooked too many details, Yi Wanwan said. Details? Xia was pensive. Of course, you have to consider every single little detail when facing a woman, or else every woman can act like Sherlock Holmes, Yi Wanwan responded. I'm all ears, Xia said with a snort. There's no harm in telling you. I'll make you accept your defeat graciously. Yi Wanwan nodded in assent. In China, do you still remember how you once called me sister? That's the first thing. The second thing was when you, me, and Ajio dined at a restaurant one time, and you and Ajio both guessed my likes and dislikes. On the surface, Ajio won and guessed everything correctly while you didn't guess a single thing correctly. Haitang looked confused, not knowing what Yi Wanwan wanted to say. Guessing incorrectly, was there something wrong with that? Xia asked. There wasn't anything wrong with that before, but after my memory partially recovered, I realized, in truth, you were the one who answered everything correctly, Yi Wanwan replied. To put it plainly, what Ajio guessed was everything that Yi Wanwan liked while what you guessed was, everything that worryless Nya liked. Yi Wanwan's eyes coldly glinted. Back then, Si Yihan did guess everything correctly, but her preferences were ones she adopted after becoming Yi Wanwan. As for Xia, he guessed worryless Nya's preferences correctly. When Yi Wanwan recovered her memories and recalled this matter, she found it very strange. Xia mockingly smiled at Yi Wanwan. So what? Me being able to guess worryless Nya's likes and dislikes could have been a mere coincidence. Even if it wasn't a coincidence, you couldn't have determined I'm the president of the martial arts union simply based on that, right? Indeed, you're right. Yi Wanwan nodded. If that was merely everything, it naturally couldn't prove Xia was the president of the martial arts union. When Yi Wanwan first recovered her memories, she was confused as to how Xia was able to guess worryless Nya's preferences but never linked Xia to the martial arts union. Xia's biggest flaw occurred on this island. Based on what you said previously, even if you weren't the president of the martial arts union and weren't connected to the martial arts union, you should have still known my identity, but your performance on this island was seriously too terrible. Yi Wanwan continued, first of all, you were captured the moment you entered the independent state, so how could you have heard of me? Even if you'd really heard of the president of the Fearless Alliance, Bai Feng, how could you have known that Bai Feng was Yi Wanwan? I don't think we've met before, right? Xia mulled over Yi Wanwan's words before replying, heh. Indeed, you do really care about the details. Second of all, you said you were imprisoned on this island because of the ancient Sea clan. Unfortunately, Ajio also came to the island. I asked Ajio about you, but he refuted your story. The Sea clan has been peaceful and calm recently and nobody by the name of Xia paid them a visit. Aside from that, the Sea clan didn't send you here, Yi Wanwan said. Xia smiled faintly. That's right. Si Yihan abruptly coming to the island wasn't within my expectations or control. In summary, after coming to the island, you found the storehouse too. How coincidental. Tell me, all the people on the island couldn't find it this whole time, but a newcomer like you found it? Was that really a coincidence? Yi Wanwan questioned. When you put it that way, my performance really was full of flaws. Xia smiled. If it was me who came to test you, it would have been as you said and you would have seen through my physique, so I specifically asked Sister Haitang to test you. Overall, the results were good. I don't recall the Si Xia in my memories having such frightening martial arts skills, Yi Wanwan said. Especially since Hai Tang coincidentally ripped off the mask by the corner of Si Xia's eyes, revealing the scar bestowed on him by a wild wolf. TSK, what a pity your memory doesn't seem to have completely recovered. Where's the fun in that? Worryless nye. Si Xia smiled meaningfully. Enough rubbish. I'm also very curious as to why you came after me and tried to kill me back then. What I'm more curious about is why you infiltrated China's Xi family after hunting after me, and even Ajio didn't know you were the president of the Martial Arts Union. Si Xia, you've hidden rather deeply indeed, Yi Wanwan said. Why did I hunt after you? Do you need to hear that from me? Si Xia asked with a smile. Before Yi Wanwan could answer, Si Xia continued, however, I can clear up other matters for you. Other matters? Yi Wanwan frowned faintly. Si Xia closed his eyes, the past surfacing in his mind. When he was young, the personality of his father, Si Bai, changed drastically because he was expelled from the independent state. Later, Si Bai returned to China's Xi family to accumulate power in waiting. Si Xia was born in China and grew up in China's Xi family and originally didn't have that many complications in his life. This world appeared rather wonderful at first. However, Si Bai treated him more and more strictly, more and more harshly, and trained him inhumanely nearly every day. He once asked Si Bai why, and Si Bai's answer was that Si Xia was his only hope for returning to the independent state and the ancient Si clan. Finally, Si Xia learned about the independent state and the world beyond his world. However, at that time, he didn't want to go to the independent state or become anyone's hope. His biggest wish was for less training and to have a small world of his own like his peers. However, all of that was an extravagant wish. He vaguely recalled the year his father brought him to the independent state, this place that held some similarities to China but was also a different, foreign land. He still remembered how Si Bai brought him to the ancient Si clan with a heart full of hope, telling the ancient Si clan that his son was a genius and hoped the ancient Si clan would forget about the past and allow him to return to the ancient Si clan since he brought a genius back. After that, the ancient Si clan conducted all sorts of tests on Si Xia. Intelligence, martial arts talent, etc., etc. But Si Xia bore resentments against his father, Si Bai, and intentionally didn't cooperate in every manner possible. As a result, the test results ended with Si Xia not reaching the standards for both intelligence and martial arts talent. The ancient Si clan expelled Si Bai from the clan again. It was autumn at that time, and the independent state was covered in snow already. In his raging fury, Si Bai tossed Si Bai to some mountain, allowing him to perish on his own. As Yi Wanwan listened to Si Xia's narration, she finally understood why she ran into Si Xia in the mountains back then. It was a coincidence that led to Grandpa rescuing Si Xia. Si Xia, you're truly an ingrate. Yi Wanwan snorted at Si Xia. Back then, on that mountain, Grandpa and I rescued you from the fangs of a wolf. Not only did you not pay us back, but you did this kind of thing. Si Xia's gaze landed on Yi Wanwan, and he chuckled lightly. 1 second. I'm not done telling my story yet. It wasn't until later that Si Xia learned the elderly man who rescued him was the president of the Martial Arts Union and that young girl was the president's granddaughter. Every day, he followed the elderly man. The elderly man treated him extremely strictly, but it was different from the strictness of his father, Si Bai. He could feel the warmth from this type of strictness. At some point in time, he started considering the president of the Martial Arts Union as his real grandfather and that girl as his real elder sister. He once swore that he absolutely wouldn't allow anyone to harm them, regardless of who it was. No one. Si Bai seemed to have lost his ambitions and became an ordinary person. When he saw Si Xia, he sobbed and wept, expressing his remorse to Si Xia. However, Si Xia understood that Si Bai had many informants in the independent state, and Si Bai was weeping most likely because he knew Si Xia was now the right-hand man of the Martial Arts Union's president. Neither Si Xia nor Si Bai addressed the elephant in the room. Si Xia returned to the Xi residence merely because he wanted to see his grandmother, so he didn't want to delve into Si Bai's business. It was during that time that Si Xia met his ninth uncle, Si Yihan. Si Yihan, the youngest genius of the independent state's Si clan. As a member of the martial arts union, Si Xia naturally knew about his ninth uncle's second identity as Lord Azura of Azura. Back then, Si Xia mused that mere China contained many hidden dragons. As a member of the martial arts union, especially since he was the president's right hand, his identity was naturally concealed flawlessly. Even his ninth uncle didn't know his true identity. Although Si Yihan investigated him and sent people to track him, he naturally found nothing in China. After spending a long time with his grandmother in the Si family, Si Xia returned to the independent state again. After you returned to the independent state, you launched a hunt after me, usurped my grandpa's position and became the president of the martial arts union. Yu Wanwan coldly looked at Si Xia. Si Xia's lips turned up. It was rather coincidental now that you mention it. After I returned to the independent state, Si Yihan also returned to the independent state. What was more coincidental was that he actually rescued you at the last minute. You know what's more hilarious? I was sitting in the car, but Si Yihan didn't recognize me. Yu Wanwan's fists clenched. So Ajio didn't know about your identity this whole time. After Ajio and I went to China, you openly used your identity as Si Xia to go back as well and monitor our every move. That's precisely why you know my preferences and incidentally called me sister. Ha, your reasoning is commendable, Si Xia said. You and your father, Si Bai, are truly father and son. Both of you are talented actors. Forget about other people, both you and your father have been acting this whole time with each other, Yu Wanwan continued. Of course. Si Xia smiled faintly. Since Si Bai was willing to act with me, I'd naturally cooperate with him. Every day, I had to watch him pretend to be wrecked with nerves at the Si residence every day and act terrified that Si Yihan would kill him. It was disgusting. He merely wanted me to be honest with him so that he could borrow my power to attack Si Yihan, but why would I? Si Bai was also my enemy, no? Si Xia, where in the world is my grandpa right now? Yu Wanwan shouted harshly. Where's grandpa? Si Xia donned a contemplative look. Let me think, if you don't speak the truth today, don't think about leaving this island. Worryless Nya, are you scaring me? I'm so scared. Si Xia smiled devilishly. But after thinking about it, it's fine even if I tell you. In truth, why are you asking me where your grandpa is? You should ask yourself instead. Yu Wanwan frowned deeper. Just what are you trying to say, Si Xia? Ha ha ha. What I'm trying to say. Worryless Nya, didn't you kill your grandpa with your own hands? The coldness in Si Xia's eyes flashed stormily. Hai Tang took a step forward and said to Yu Wanwan, if you don't have this segment of memory, don't believe him. Before Yu Wanwan could speak, Hai Tang continued, you know the friendship we had before, Worryless. We know each other very well. If you really killed your grandpa with your own hands like he said, there's no way news of it wouldn't get out. Don't believe him. Only after that did Yu Wanwan's complexion improve slightly. Indeed, she currently didn't possess this memory segment, so what really happened couldn't solely depend on Si Xia's words. She killed her grandpa simply because Si Xia said so. What absurd joke was that? You still won't tell the truth, huh? Yu Wanwan's gaze turned colder as she stared at Si Xia. Heh. Ah, Worryless Nya, your ambitions were truly too great. You wanted to rule the entire independent state. You want to stomp everything beneath your feet. However, your grandfather was the president of the martial arts union, so he stopped you. However, you lost your most basic humanity and killed your grandfather with your own hands, am I right? Si Xia snorted. Stop spouting nonsense. Hai Tang yelled at him angrily. Hai Tang knew Worryless Nya very well. If Worryless Nya really possessed this ambition, she could have just stayed in the martial arts union since she would eventually take over as the president of the martial arts union. Why would she need to create the Fearless Alliance? Could it be that the power of the Martial Arts Union's president was less than that of the Fearless Alliance's president? Xia, you are really full of lies. Yuanwan didn't care about Xia's words anymore. So great that she would resort to killing her own grandpa and stomp the entire independent state beneath her feet? Just take a look at the members of the Fearless Alliance. Big Dipper, Third Elder, those Hall Masters, and Elders, which one of them was freaking reliable? Dominate and rule over the independent state. With what? With the mere Fearless Alliance? Moreover, in the memories Yuanwan recalled, there wasn't a single piece or detail that portrayed her desire to rule over the independent state. Hence, what Xia was saying was purely complete nonsense to confuse her. Oh. So you didn't want to rule over the independent state? Then I'm really curious why you would kill Grandpa. Could it be because Grandpa prohibited you from being with Si Yihan, so you harbored resentment and killed him? Xia smiled faintly. Worryless, listen to this. He's simply uttering nonsense and is trying to mess with your mind. Don't be tricked, Haitang said to Yuanwan. Sister Haitang, I know. Yuanwan nodded at the other woman. Yuanwan then turned to Xia and shouted, Xia, stop spouting bullshit. If you won't tell the truth today, don't think about leaving. To Yuanwan, it was probably Xia who wanted to overthrow her grandfather and usurp his position to stand at the top of the independent state's power pyramid. Then he wanted to cut the weeds and eliminate its roots, so he hunted after her. If that was really it, everything would be explained perfectly. Ha! Worryless Nya, aren't you very detail-oriented and talented with logic and reasoning? Then think about this carefully, what happened in between all this? Do you not have this segment of memory because you can't remember it or because you're unwilling to remember it? Who is the true demon? Is it you? Xia smiled faintly at that. Worryless Nya, do you really think you can rescue the people on this island? In reality, are you actually saving people or are you killing people? Before Yuanwan could respond, Xia's figure flickered and melded into the dark. He disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. Worryless. What just happened? Haitang asked Yuanwan after Xia left. Yuanwan seemed to be familiar with the president of the Martial Arts Union. Yuanwan shook her head. This matter was too complicated and couldn't be explained in a few words. We need to find Xia, Yuanwan said. Alright, Haitang agreed. Yuanwan and Haitang immediately combed the perimeters of the island in search of Xia. However, this island was too large, and they were unable to find Xia. Haitang, keep this matter a secret for now so we don't affect everyone's morale, Yuanwan instructed Haitang before they parted ways. If everyone knew the president of the Martial Arts Union was on the island and knew they were about to escape the island. I understand. Haitang nodded. The next morning, Yuanwan sought out Si Yihan and told him everything that happened last night with Xia. When Si Yihan heard the story, he didn't appear very surprised. Ajio, don't tell me you knew Xia was the president of the Martial Arts Union a long time ago. Yuanwan furrowed her brows. The man shook his head. I didn't. Why are you so calm if you didn't know then? That's your real nephew. I already told you back in China to not trust him. Si Yihan looked at her. What do you know? Yuanwan asked curiously. I once looked into him, Si Yihan answered after a moment of thought. He frequently enters and leaves the independent state, but I was unable to discover his true identity despite the resources at my disposal. Si Yihan was suspicious of and took precautions against Xia long ago, so he wasn't surprised after learning that Xia was the president of the Martial Arts Union. Moreover, Si Yihan was well aware of how Si Bai brought Xia back to the independent state years ago and used Xia as a bargaining chip to return to the ancient Si clan, but Xia didn't pass the exams. Si Yihan never cared about Si Bai, but his nephew, Xia, concealed himself very deeply. What should we do now? Xia knows about our plan, so, Yuanwan was somewhat concerned. Si Yihan wasn't worried about this though and replied, "This island masks all signals completely, and all communication devices are nulled. It takes 2 days to return to the independent state from this island, so even if Si Xia knows about our plan and wants to stop it, he can't do it in time." Only then were Yuanwan's worries assuaged. Soon, 3 days had passed. Yuanwan and many leaders acted according to the plan and lit the entire island on fire. It wasn't long before heavy smoke enveloped the island. "Say, Bai Feng, you better not harm us. If a ship doesn't come, we'll all be suffocated to death." Yuanwan wasn't concerned though. She accepted the ship ticket money already, so how could there be no ship? Not long after the island was set aflame, dozens of ships appeared in the sea. Ships from Azura, the Fearless Alliance, and the Nye family thickly dotted the distance. The guards the martial arts union placed around the island were scattered within several rounds of attacks. Although the martial arts union didn't place many guards around the island, they weren't weak. However, they couldn't withstand the surprise attack from 3 strong groups and were completely overwhelmed in terms of numbers alone. The process went smoother than Yuanwan expected. Every prisoner on this island successfully boarded a ship and escaped from this island. After returning to the independent state, they didn't launch a crusade against the martial arts union though. Everyone was unusually tacit in remaining quiet. Even the Fearless Alliance didn't retaliate against the martial arts union in any way and didn't interrogate them in any manner. The return of the missing leaders evoked a major ripple in the independent state and caused Yuanwan to become the most frequently discussed topic of every resident's conversation. The nefarious president of the Fearless Alliance actually discovered where the leaders were imprisoned and rescued them. This was a hot topic. As for the martial arts union, they didn't respond in any way, as though they were ignorant of this matter. For these returning leaders, their biggest priority was to rebuild their strength in the independent state and recuperate for a while. No one was foolish enough to condemn the martial arts union as soon as they escaped from the island. Moreover, none of them had concrete evidence that proved it was the martial arts union who imprisoned them. After returning to the independent state, Yuanwan rested for 2 days before visiting the Ling residence. In the Ling residence living room, an austere elderly man's gaze landed on Yuanwan, affection filling his eyes. "Worryless, come to Grandpa." The elderly man waved his hand at Yuanwan. Yuanwan obediently nodded and sat down next to the elderly man. This elderly man was the patriarch of the Ling family, Ling Shichang, and he was Yuanwan's grandfather. "Worryless, is there any news of your parents?" Ling Shichang asked Yuanwan after a long silence. "No, Grandpa." Yuanwan shook her head. The Nye family, Azura, and the Fearless Alliance had dispatched a lot of people to search for Patriarch Nye and Madame Nye, but they were still empty-handed. Yuanwan previously thought Patriarch Nye and Madame Nye might have been captured to the island, but she didn't discover any traces of them after entering the island herself. Hence, Yuanwan hypothesized that there was a great possibility her parents were in the hands of the direct line. Of course, this was mere conjecture and wasn't proved. "Then the Ling family will also join the search," Ling Shichang said after some time. Yuanwan's eyes brightened. The Ling family's intelligence network was immensely extraordinary. If the Ling family joined, "Worryless, Grandpa has heard about what happened to you, including your time in China and Lord Azura." Ling Shichang abruptly changed the topic. "Grandpa missed you and your brother greatly these past years, but you should know about the situation with me and your parents." Yuanwan's eyes dimmed several degrees at the mention of nameless Nye. "Oh right, Worryless, where's your brother?" Nameless Nye's matter wasn't publicized, and the Nye family locked down the information immediately, so even the Ling family was clueless. "All right. When your brother's back, have him come to the Ling residence too," Ling Shichang instructed. "Okay." Yuanwan nodded. "Oh right, what's the story behind the island? Who was the culprit?" Ling Shichang continued his line of inquiry. Yuanwan mulled over it for a moment before deciding to tell Ling Shichang the whole story. It was the martial arts union. Ling Shichang frowned upon learning the truth. What you're saying is that the boy your grandfather rescued back then is the current president of the Martial Arts Union. I will thoroughly investigate this matter. Ling Shichang looked grim. The independent state might not be able to maintain its peace soon. Grandpa, what do you mean? Yi Wanwan was surprised. While you were on the island, the Direct Line announced it'll start a war with the independent state's collateral branch, and it started to make allies with all the major factions in the independent state, Ling Shichang replied. The Direct Line announced it would start a war with the independent state. Yi Wanwan really didn't know about this matter. Oh right, Grandpa. How is the collateral branch differentiated from the Direct Line? Yi Wanwan asked Ling Shichang. To put it plainly, the collateral branch and the Direct Line are the descendants of the seniors who first inhabited the independent state. The major clans like the ancient Si clan and the ancient Jiang clan are considered the collateral branch. The Direct Line was once ancient clans from the independent state, but after the great battle between the Direct Line and the collateral branch, the Direct Line was defeated and expelled from the independent state by the collateral branch, Ling Shichang explained. Then are the four great clans considered the Direct Line or collateral branch? Yi Wanwan inquired. Ling Shichang smiled faintly. Ah, worryless, us four great clans are neither considered the collateral branch nor are we related to the Direct Line. It isn't just the four great clans, aside from the ancient clans, none of the factions in the independent state are members of the collateral branch or the Direct Line. Yi Wanwan finally obtained a rough understanding of the collateral branch and the Direct Line. To put it plainly, this was completely a war between the ancient clans and didn't have anything to do with them. Since it was unrelated to them, they could let them fight if they wanted. It wasn't like it would affect the rest of them. The worst scenario was the collateral branch being kicked out. Grandpa, since it doesn't have anything to do with us, why should we get involved? Yi Wanwan asked in incomprehension. It does have something to do with us. Ling Shichang explained, the Direct Line emphasizes governance while the collateral branch emphasizes balance. If the independent state is controlled by the Direct Line, it wouldn't be a good thing. Realization dawned on Yi Wanwan after her grandfather's explanation. After carefully thinking about it, the strongest factions in the independent state were definitely the ancient clans right now. However, as Ling Shichang said, the ancient clans emphasized balance, so they would never manage business between the other factions, let alone interfere or favor one side. To put it precisely, the ancient clans were responsible for the rules and structure of the independent state while the Martial Arts Union was responsible for executing those rules and structures. The other factions were just various residents. Grandpa, who do you think has a greater chance of winning in the battle between the Direct Line and the collateral branch this time? Yi Wanwan inquired. Is the Direct Line really that strong? Why were they expelled from the independent state by the collateral branch back then? Yi Wanwan couldn't understand. During the war between the Direct Line and the collateral branch back then, luck actually factored into the collateral branch's win. Furthermore, the Direct Line currently has a major helper, piece of shit, Ling Shichang said. At the mention of piece of shit, Yi Wanwan's expression became surprised. Indeed, Ishue Han appeared to have some deep enmity with those ancient clans. Grandpa, just what happened between piece of shit, the Direct Line, and the collateral branch? Yi Wanwan pressed. I'm not certain about that. Isn't Tang Tang piece of shit's disciple? You can ask Tang Tang about this matter, Ling Shichang suggested. After eating lunch with Ling Shichang, Yi Wanwan returned to the Fearless Alliance headquarters. In these past 2 days, Tang Tang had been staying at the Fearless Alliance, so she could ask Tang Tang. Currently, inside Yi Wanwan's office in the Fearless Alliance, 7 Star and Big Dipper were crowded around when Xiren, and Big Dipper was especially overjoyed. Brother Xiren, you're finally back. Without you, the Fearless Alliance was a tiger without its wings and a male eagle without its eyes, Big Dipper rattled on. 7 Star shot Big Dipper a look. A male eagle without its eyes. He was such a good conversationalist. When Xiren merely smiled, showing no care regarding Big Dipper's description. What are you all talking about? Yi Wanwan asked as she pushed the door open and entered. Sis Feng, you're back, visit website our list novel. Com. They walked up to her immediately. Xiao Feng, while I was gone, you've taken good care of the Fearless Alliance, Wen Xiren commented with a smile. The old Fearless Alliance solely relied on these two pillars. One was President Fearless, Bai Feng, while the other person was Wen Xiren, and neither person was dispensable. Relying on those elders and hall masters was obviously improbable. In the entire Fearless Alliance, only First Elder and 7 Star were on the normal side, an incontestable point. Before Yu Wanwan could speak, Wen Xiren suddenly said, "People from the direct line came this morning." What? Yu Wanwan was dumbfounded. People from the direct line visited the Fearless Alliance. That's right, Sis Feng, an old man came this morning. He was a member of the direct line. If I didn't see how old and infirmed he was, I would have kicked him to the ground, Big Dipper grumbled. Brother Xiren, why did members of the direct line visit the Fearless Alliance? Yu Wanwan asked Wen Xiren. Since you weren't here, I didn't talk long with them and sent them away. They should be back again soon, Wen Xiren replied. Got it. Yu Wanwan nodded. She was rather curious why members of the direct line came here. After chatting with Wen Xiren and the other two, Yu Wanwan went to find Tang Tang. The Fearless Alliance's 13th floor, Tang Tang was currently lying on Great White's stomach while Virus kept yawning with his head lowered on Tang Tang's left. The drowsy Tang Tang was invigorated the second he saw Yu Wanwan entering the room. Tang Tang, if you don't read more books, Mommy will send you to school, Yu Wanwan said to Tang Tang. Tang Tang has been reading, Tang Tang objected. Tang Tang, you definitely don't want to become uneducated like your uncle Big Dipper when you grow up, right? Yu Wanwan asked. Oh right, Tang Tang. Mommy has a question for you. Yu Wanwan pulled Tang Tang into her arms and sat down on the sofa. What is it, Mommy? Tang Tang asked curiously. Do you know the story with your master, Shuehan? Do you know why your master hates the members of the ancient clans so much? Yu Wanwan inquired. Although Yu Wanwan knew Yi Shuehan had a tremendous conflict with those ancient clans of the independent state, she didn't know about the origin of the conflict. Yu Wanwan didn't think Yi Shuehan's hatred against the ancient clans was that simple either. The independent state had 5 major ancient clans. They were the ancient Si clan, the ancient Yin clan, the ancient Hua clan, the ancient Jiang clan, and the ancient Ying clan. Yi Shuehan didn't hate a single specific ancient clan. He hated all of the ancient clans. Mommy, I know a little, Tang Tang responded after a moment of thought. Yu Wanwan's eyes brightened. She originally just wanted to give it a try and didn't expect Tang Tang to really have gossip to share. Tang Tang, tell Mommy, Yu Wanwan said happily. But, Mommy, Master doesn't like other people knowing about his story, Tang Tang said. It appeared Yi Shuehan really had some sort of history behind him, and he didn't want other people to know about it. However, the more Tang Tang acted like this, the more curious Yu Wanwan was. Tang Tang, your master is right, you mustn't tell other people. Otherwise, if your master finds out, he'll definitely be unhappy. Yu Wanwan paused and smiled at Tang Tang. But, that's for other people. Is Mommy other people? Tang Tang finally nodded and spilled everything he knew to Yu Wanwan. This story had to start from the war between the direct line and the collateral branch. Yi Shuihan's mother was originally a member of the direct line, but she was merely an ordinary woman and cut ties with the direct line when she was young, moving to live on the fringes of the independent state. After the war between the direct line and the collateral branch erupted, it persisted for many years until the direct line was defeated and expelled from the independent state by the collateral branch. If you wanted to hear my story, why didn't you ask me directly? As Yu Wanwan became entranced with the story, an aloof male voice came from behind her. Damn! You scared me to death. Yu Wanwan seriously jolted in fright when she saw Yi Shuehan entering suddenly, guilt crawling up on her. Master, Tang Tang called. Why are you here, knight errant? Yu Wanwan stared at the man before her, stunned. I came to see my disciple, Yi Shuehan replied. What? You seem very interested in my story. Yi Shuihan asked her. No way. I was just curious about the relationship between you and the direct line, knight-errant Yi, and why you hate the ancient clans so much, Yi Wanwan answered with a smile. The corners of Yi Shuihan's lips turned up with an inexplicable smile. The origin of everything. Back then, he hadn't entered the independent state yet and was living south of the independent state. He lived an ordinary life with his mother, depending on each other for survival. That girl's appearance splashed strokes across his life. Yi Wanwan keenly listened to Yi Shuihan's recount with relish. Having the protagonist himself tell the story added a better flavor to it. That girl became your girlfriend? Yi Wanwan asked Yi Shuihan. Moreover, right now, that girl didn't appear to be by Yi Shuihan's side anymore. That girl later moved into Yi Shuihan's home and lived with Yi Shuihan and his mother. Until one day, Yi Shuihan went out. When he returned home, he saw his mother dead on the dining table, lethally poisoned, and the girl was lifelessly sitting on a stool. Under Yi Shuihan's intense interrogation, the girl finally spoke the truth. In truth, she had poisoned the food already, and this lethal poison was originally reserved for Yi Shuihan. However, at the last moment, the girl hesitated and intended to throw away the poisoned dishes. Unfortunately, Yi Shuihan's mother coincidentally consumed the poisoned food and died. Yi Wanwan couldn't help but shiver after hearing that. After carefully thinking about it, every time Yi Shuihan ate a meal, he needed to carefully examine the food, as though he was afraid of it being poisoned. It turned out it was this incident that left behind an indelible shadow in Yi Shuihan's heart. What happened to that girl? Yi Wanwan stared at Yi Shuihan, wanting to know the ending. I killed her, Shuihan replied aloofly. Yi Wanwan sank into contemplation. It'd be better if she listened to these types of stories less often. On second thought, Yi Wanwan realized something was amiss. What did this have to do with Yi Shuihan antagonizing the collateral branch? Could it be that girl was a member of the collateral branch? Later, Yi Wanwan learned that the girl really was a member of the collateral branch. Back then, the collateral branch found out about Yi Shuihan and knew Yi Shuihan's mother belonged to the direct line. The collateral branch was worried Yi Shuihan would join the direct line's camp, so they picked a well-trained assassin from their elites, and that girl was the chosen assassin. Yi Wanwan was rendered speechless by Yi Shuihan's recount. Wasn't this too melodramatic? So don't you think those ancient clans all deserve to die? Yi Shuihan asked as he looked at her. Yi Wanwan shook her head, dumbfounded. Not necessarily, not necessarily. Yi Shuihan frowned lightly. Hard to say, Yi Wanwan rubbed her chin. Really can't say, Yi Wanwan sighed. How should she say this? Although the collateral branch really was terrible based on Yi Shuihan's narration and those ancient clans did deserve the hate. But Yi Wanwan realized a fact. Her man, Si Yihan, was also a freaking member of the ancient clans. So how should she respond? Should she tell Yi Shuihan, the collateral branch deserves to die, and I'll support you in your quest to eliminate those ancient clans? In her mind, Yi Wanwan did disdain the ancient clan's methods, but she couldn't vocalize anything. She really couldn't find a single refutable reason regarding his desire to destroy those ancient clans. Forget about Yi Shuihan. If Yi Wanwan was in his shoes, she would have probably done the exact same thing Yi Shuihan did. Aside from visiting Tang Tang, I came here today to remind you, don't carelessly interfere in the business between the collateral branch and the direct line, Shuihan advised. You're definitely going to take action, right? Yi Wanwan asked with a frown. The battle between the direct line and the collateral branch is unrelated to me. I merely have private grievances against those ancient clans, Shuihan replied indifferently. That's unrelated to me, Yi Shuihan aloofly replied. However, based on the current situation, a battle is unavoidable. Yi Wanwan sighed helplessly. It appeared the independent state was about to bid peace farewell. After Yi Shuihan left, Big Dipper opened the door and said, Sis Feng, that old geezer is here again. Which old geezer? Yi Wanwan glanced at him. That old geezer from the direct line, the one who visited this morning, Big Dipper explained. All right, I'll be right there. Yi Wanwan nodded. Yi Wanwan was very intrigued by the direct line's sudden visit too. Just what was the direct line's goal? Mommy, I also want to go, Tang Tang spoke up. Be good, Tang Tang. Mommy is going to take care of business. Play together with Great White and Little Black. Mommy will be back soon. Yi Wanwan smiled. Okay. Tang Tang was compliant and nodded. A moment later, Yi Wanwan cleaned up a little and followed Big Dipper to the conference room. Inside the conference room, an elderly man was dressed in a black shirt and black pants, looking very proper. He sat on one side with a cane in hand. This is the president of the Fearless Alliance. By phone, Big Dipper made introductions. The elderly man nodded and scrutinized Yi Wanwan before using his cane to stand up. He greeted Yi Wanwan with a smile. President Bai, it's an honor to meet you at last. No need for the formalities, elderly sir. May I ask what urgent matter you had for visiting our Fearless Alliance? Yi Wanwan sat down and looked at the elderly man from the direct line, cutting straight to the point. The elderly man smiled faintly. President Bai is very straightforward, great. Then I won't beat around the bush either. I came here today to ask President Bai to join the direct line's camp. Yi Wanwan furrowed her brows at once. Visit website our list novel. She never anticipated the objective of this elderly man's trip would be to rope her to their side. However, on the other hand, Yi Wanwan understood. There would definitely be a great battle between the direct line and the collateral branch, and there were many factions in the independent state. Whether it was the collateral branch or the direct line, they probably wished to pull these neutral factions in the independent state to their side. This way, they would have a greater chance when the battle came. Upon seeing Yi Wanwan's silence, the elderly man continued with a smile. In reality, President Bai should know that our direct line is the legitimate heir of the independent state. Moreover, the direct line is stronger in strength. Of the 12 independent states, our state has become the bottommost state. Back then, was our state ever this pitiful? What do you think, President Bai? The 12 independent states. Yi Wanwan looked pensive. This piece of memory was indeed a part of the memories that Yi Wanwan recalled after the Scarlet Flame's headmaster's hypnosis sessions. It was her grandpa who told her about this too. In truth, the independent state was actually the independent states and was composed of 12 enormous islands. The independent state they were currently in was merely one of the 12 islands, and it wasn't until these 12 islands combined together that the true independent states were formed. However, no independent states had any mutual interactions, so not many people knew about this. President Bai, as long as the Fearless Alliance is willing to support our direct line, when the direct line gains control in the future, we can guarantee that the Fearless Alliance will definitely become better than you are now. What do you think? The elderly man from direct line proposed amiably. Please speak, President Bai, the elderly man said. My parents, the madam and patriarch of the Nya family, they were captured by the direct line, right? Yi Wanwan asked him. Yes. The elderly man from the direct line nodded frankly. Yi Wanwan didn't expect this old man from the direct line to be this honest. He was too honest. She didn't freaking know how to respond. I know President Bai has some misunderstandings toward our direct line, and the main cause of this misunderstanding is Nya Linglong. The elderly man smiled at Yi Wanwan. In truth, the direct line has too many members, and a member like Nya Linglong is merely considered an offshoot and not worth a mention. Our direct line can't demand every member to obey the rules. Someone always acts recklessly and disobey the rules, there's nothing we can do. The corners of Yi Wanwan's lips twitched. What kind of freaking twisted logic was this? The direct line's members were disobeying the rules and acting recklessly outside, but it was unrelated to their direct line? Couldn't he have some shame? In truth, Nya Linglong is extremely ambitious. To be quite honest, the direct line doesn't like overly ambitious people like her, so we've already kicked her out of the direct line. As for President Bai's parents, they were captured by Nia Linglong, the elderly man continued. For some reason, Yu Wanwan suddenly started respecting the direct line for being able to say something like this without skipping a beat and tossing away all responsibility so cleanly. They truly had thick hides. After all, Nia Linglong was dead, so they could say whatever they wanted. President Bai, if you're willing to join the direct line and persuade your parents to support the direct line, we can immediately release them, the elderly man added. Ha, let's not waste our breaths. Tell me, just who was the mysterious person Nia Linglong reported to? He and Nia Linglong killed my brother, so I will make them pay with their lives. A cold glint flashed across Yu Wanwan's eyes. The elderly man's eyes glimmered. President Bai, there isn't any mysterious person. Third elder shouted coldly. How could there be no one? When I tracked Nia Linglong that night, she made contact with a mysterious person, and they discussed eliminating nameless Nia first. The elderly man's fingers started tapping on the table. You're free to consider my suggestion, President Bai. After saying that, the elderly man stood up and left without waiting for Yu Wanwan's response. Yu Wanwan's expression darkened. She was certain that the mysterious person definitely existed. Furthermore, that mysterious person held an important position in the direct line. The treatment of nameless Nia alone meant that Yu Wanwan couldn't have any other relationships with the direct line. They could only be enemies. Not long after the direct line left, Big Dipper dashed inside the conference room again. Damn! Sea Clan, the ancient Sea Clan sent us an invitation. Big Dipper immediately handed her the invitation. After reading the invitation, Yu Wanwan was dumbstruck. The direct line and the collateral branch were truly family and had the same temperament. The direct line just sent people to win her over, then the ancient Sea Clan also sent her an invitation. That night, Yu Wanwan brought Wenziren, several elders, Big Dipper, 7 Star, and several other members to the ancient Sea Clan. The ancient Sea Clan was considered one of the mammoth powers in the independent state, and the scope of their strength was frightening. Inside the ancient Sea Clan's conference room, Yu Wanwan immediately caught sight of Si Yihan sitting next to the leader of the ancient Sea Clan. It had to be said that these two people truly looked rather similar. Since it was an important, solemn meeting and the participants were all leaders from the independent state, Yu Wanwan and Si Yihan didn't interact too much. And the leader of the Sea Clan's words were simple and easy to understand. He wanted them to join the collateral branch and resist the direct line's invasion together. However, all the major factions were non-committal, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. No one wanted to be the first one. The second any of them agreed, it'd be the same as becoming enemies with the direct line. Even Yu Wanwan didn't declare whether she would join the ancient clans and the collateral branch's camp or not. Right now, Madam and Patriarch Nia were imprisoned in the direct line. If the Fearless Alliance and the Nia family joined the collateral branch, it might infuriate the direct line, leading to unthinkable consequences. This was in line with Si Yihan's intentions. He didn't want her to act rashly and wanted them to watch and wait for the right opportunity. After departing from the ancient Sea Clan, Si Yihan escorted Yu Wanwan back to the Fearless Alliance's headquarters. The family of 3 ate dinner there, and Si Yihan didn't leave until Tang Tang fell asleep. Lately, Azura had too many affairs waiting for attention, and Si Yihan needed to personally take care of them. 2 days afterward, both the Fearless Alliance and Prison announced that the Fearless Alliance would join Prison and become Prison's 4th core faction. Right now, the Fearless Alliance was tightly bound together with Prison, and they could share their resources, especially in an unusual period of time like this. Furthermore, something occurred that sent shocks throughout the independent state. Azura single-handedly eradicated 3 branches of the Martial Arts Union and destroyed 6 of their vital storehouses in one night. After that, the Martial Arts Union retaliated, and Heavenly Hatred and Slaughter's Gate also joined. The battle couldn't be stopped. Ajio, why did you start fighting with the Martial Arts Union? From the Fearless Alliance, Yu Wanwan initiated a video call with Si Yihan. Where's Tang Tang? Si Yihan asked. He just finished eating and he's playing with Great White and Little Black on the 13th floor, Yi Wanwan answered truthfully. Wait. I was asking you why you started fighting with the martial arts union. Lately, the independent state was in an extremely tumultuous state already, so it would have been best if the matter with the martial arts union was stowed aside for now. What do you think? Si Yihan retorted. In truth, Yi Wanwan could guess that Azura didn't attack the martial arts union because of what happened on the island. It was probably because of what Si Xia did to her back then. However, making anyone from prison assess the current situation was simply unrealistic. Which one of them didn't act as their heart desired, including the Fearless Alliance? You don't need to get involved with this matter, it's just a minor battle, Si Yihan said. Yi Wanwan didn't refute this point. Both the martial arts union and prison didn't exert their whole strength, so it could indeed be considered a minor battle. Those leaders they rescued from the remote island announced their unconditional support for the collateral branch immediately. After that, the direct line acted and promptly dispatched a lot of assassins after those leaders. In a short amount of time, a dozen or so leaders were assassinated. If it weren't for Azura having the foresight to send people to protect those leaders immediately and warn them, the consequences would have been inconceivable. It wasn't only the direct line. The collateral branch also acted identically to the direct line and dispatched a lot of assassins from the ancient clans, secretly assassinating those leaders who had announced their support for the direct line. However, what no one anticipated were the sudden actions of piece of shit, Shuehan. Nearly all of those well-trained assassins sent by the ancient clans died in the hands of Yi Shuehan. Right now, the entire independent state was attempting to stay out of it, and many factions were still observing, including the Fearless Alliance and the two other core factions of prison. Meanwhile, Azura had publicized their support for the collateral branch long ago and became one of the collateral branch's biggest helpers. Suddenly, the relationships in the independent state turned tangled and complicated and hard to describe. Major factions belonged to different camps, and small-scale battles would erupt nearly every day. As for the four great clans, they fell to the observer side. The direct line and the collateral branch sent someone to visit and lobby the four great clans nearly every day but never received a definite response. Nonetheless, Yi Wanwan was incredibly aware that it was absolutely impossible for powers at the level of the four great clans to rest easy, maintain neutrality and stay out of the conflict. The time merely hadn't come yet. Once the time was ripe, the four great clans had to make a decision. This battle involved the entire independent state. Not a single power could remain on the sidelines. Even if they were unwilling to join the war between the direct line and the collateral branch, they had no choice. Late at night, in the Fearless Alliance, Yi Wanwan's thoughts raced as she mulled over what road she should take in the future. Right now, her parents were still in the hands of the direct line. If she rashly supported the collateral branch and provoked the direct line, it would be idiotic. Yi Wanwan merely wanted to avenge her brother, nameless Nya, and rescue her parents from the hands of the direct line. She truly was uninterested in the overarching war between the collateral branch and the direct line. Governing the independent state and such. It had nothing to do with her. Yi Wanwan suddenly called outside the door. Sis Feng, you were looking for me. Big Dipper entered the room. Call some people. We're going to visit the direct line, Yi Wanwan instructed. Big Dipper was dumbfounded. No way, right? Sis Feng. We're going to the direct line, at this critical time. Nonsense, what's wrong with going to the direct line? Yi Wanwan asked. If we visit the direct line, isn't it the same as supporting the direct line? Big Dipper scratched his head. Enough rubbish. Hurry and make preparations, Yi Wanwan ordered impatiently. Soon, several elders of the Fearless Alliance, Big Dipper, 7-Star, and top higher-ups like Wen Xiren all departed and headed toward the perimeters of the Fearless Alliance's territory. Your visit this late at night is truly surprising, President Bai, an elderly man from the direct line greeted with a smile as he hastily walked outside to receive them. Yi Wanwan wasn't unfamiliar with this elderly man. He was the one who had visited the Fearless Alliance these past few days. I won't waste time with you. My objective for coming here today is very simple. The Fearless Alliance and the Nye family will support the direct line, but you must release my parents first. Yi Wanwan got straight to the point. The elderly man's expression turned joyful. That's right. Yi Wanwan nodded. Great, if that's really true, then President Bai's parents are naturally our honored guests. The direct line will immediately release them. The elderly man from direct line nodded. Before Yi Wanwan could say anything, the elderly man continued, however, since both the Fearless Alliance and the Nye family are supporting the direct line, let's sign a treaty. The elderly man sent his subordinate a look. The subordinate immediately brought a war treaty to them. When Yi Wanwan read the contents, she was dumbstruck. The direct line was seriously freaking cunning and calculating. This type of war treaty was managed by the 12 Independent States Arbitration Council. The 12 Independent States Arbitration Council represented the largest-scale neutral power in the 12 independent states. Nearly all of the rules in the independent states were crafted by the Arbitration Council, and no one dared to violate the decisions of the Arbitration Council. Even the direct line and collateral branch didn't have the guts. This treaty would actually be directly supervised by the Arbitration Council. If either party violated it. What? You don't trust me, elderly sir? I'm the president of the Fearless Alliance and the head of the Nye family, to say the least. What happened to trust between humans? Could it be our trust is less than this piece of paper? Yi Wanwan said to the elderly man with a sigh. The elderly man from direct line chuckled and looked at Yi Wanwan. President Bai. If it was another faction saying this, I would have believed it. However, it's precisely because President Bai is the president of the Fearless Alliance that we must honestly carry out what we promised and sign this war treaty. What about the Fearless Alliance, huh? Shouldn't you ask around? The Fearless Alliance, especially me, the president, has always sworn by our word, Yi Wanwan replied. Heh. President Bai. Everyone knows about the Fearless Alliance's reputation, so you don't need to say any more. Of course, the direct line believes in President Bai's sincerity, but, let's sign the treaty, the elderly man said. You're too freaking shameless. In the end, Yi Wanwan had no choice but to pick up the pen and sign the treaty as well as stamping her handprint on the document. Good now. Yi Wanwan pushed the contract back toward them. The elderly man examined the treaty for a moment before nodding at Yi Wanwan and smiling. It's good. Welcome to the Direct Line's big family, Fearless Alliance and Nye family. Where's my dad and mom? Yi Wanwan asked. Don't worry, President Bai. Your father and mother are at a different branch. They will return to the Nye residence early tomorrow morning, the elderly man replied. Yi Wanwan nodded. Fine, I'll trust you this one time. After saying that, she led the Fearless Alliance group out of the room. Damn, Sis Feng, are we really joining the direct line? Isn't this too hasty? Big Dipper asked on their return trip. Yi Wanwan brusquely snapped, her mood sour. She previously planned to trick the direct line and make them release her parents first. Nothing was more important than her parents' safety. Who would have thought the direct line would be so difficult to trick? They directly pulled out a war treaty that was managed by the Arbitration Council. After you signed this contract, the direct line wouldn't care whether you fulfilled your end of the bargain or not because at that time, the people from the Arbitration Council would appear personally. Even the direct line and the collateral branch had to be on their best behavior and act courteously when they met with the Arbitration Council. It seemed to be a bit tricky this time. However, Yi Wanwan had never seen the Arbitration Council and was clueless about their true capabilities. Xiao Feng, the Arbitration Council is above the 12 independent states' laws and system, Wen Xiren said. Everyone in the 12 independent states has to obey the Arbitration Council's laws and implementations. This includes the ban on firearms and explosives, which is clearly prohibited by the Arbitration Council. If anyone violates the laws, the Arbitration Council will act personally and no one can save the violator. I know that, Yi Wanwan replied. In Yi Wanwan's memories, nameless Nye nearly became a consultant for the arbitration council, but he rejected the position. Yi Wanwan never expected the arbitration council to be this frightening. Thankfully I'm prepared. Do you think I'd lose against the direct line in terms of shamelessness? Yi Wanwan's lips turned up with a smirk. In the midst of Yi Wanwan's anxious waiting, Madam and Patriarch Nye finally returned. Right now, in the Nye residence living room, Madam and Patriarch Nye were sitting in the chief seats while Yi Wanwan stayed near them. Judging from Madam and Patriarch Nye's appearances, the direct line didn't seem to have done anything to them and merely imprisoned them normally. Yi Wanwan couldn't find even a superficial scratch on them. Worryless, we have to thank you this time, Madam Nye said as she grasped Yi Wanwan's hand. Dad, Mom, I'm glad you're fine. Yi Wanwan smiled happily. As long as Dad and Mom were alright, she was relieved. Yi Wanwan couldn't withstand losing any more of her family. Worryless, where's your eldest brother? Patriarch Nye looked around the room and didn't see nameless Nye. Dad. Eldest brother, he accepted a mission earlier and went elsewhere. It will probably be a while before he's back, Yi Wanwan answered. Yi Wanwan previously laid down the order that no one was allowed to reveal what happened to nameless Nye to Madam and Patriarch Nye. Any violators would be expelled from the Nye family. Hurry and tell your brother to come back. Our Nye family won't be able to stay out of the conflict between the direct line and the collateral branch, Patriarch Nye said with a frown. Dad, I told eldest brother already, but eldest brother isn't in the independent state right now and he's overseas. Right now, the independent state has gone under lockdown because of the battle that's about to happen, so eldest brother couldn't come back even if he wanted to, Yi Wanwan said. Patriarch Nye snorted. If your brother could be half as good as you, your mom and I could die without any worries. Dad. Mom. Actually, eldest brother is really good. Don't blame him. I agreed to let him accept the mission too, and who would have expected things to play out this way as soon as eldest brother left? Yi Wanwan said after a moment of silence. Forget it. Madam Nye shook her head. We're used to this, but we absolutely can't lower our guard in the battle between the direct line and the collateral branch this time. I'm leaning toward the collateral branch. Yi Wanwan completely anticipated her parents to lean toward the collateral branch. If they were captured and imprisoned by the direct line and turned around to support the direct line moments after they were released, that would be absurd. That ingrate, Nye Linglong, Patriarch Nye's eyes glinted coldly. Immediately issue a Nye family warrant and capture her at all costs. Patriarch and Madam Nye were still unaware of the fact that Nye Linglong was dead already. The current situation was so chaotic. If she informed them of the truth at this critical time and her parents did something in their incensed state, the consequences would be unthinkable. According to the terms of the treaty, the Fearless Alliance had to announce its cooperation with the direct line within 3 days. However, when the third day came, there still wasn't any activity from the Fearless Alliance. In the Fearless Alliance's conference room, every higher-up from the Fearless Alliance was gathered there, as well as members from the Rose of Death that Yi Wanwan previously founded. Little Lolita, Heidi, and the others were intently looking at Yi Wanwan. It had been such a long time, they thought their master had forgotten about them. Right now, the Rose of Death was developing fairly successfully. They had the support of the Fearless Alliance's funds in their initial stage, which greatly alleviated any pressure. Recently, the Rose of Death maintained a decent relationship with the surrounding groups and conducted many business dealings with other people. The Rose of Death today wasn't the Rose of Death of the past anymore. Aside from a few old faces, the majority of the higher-ups from the Rose of Death were new faces and possessed extraordinary strength. The elders from the Rose of Death settled their gazes on Yi Wanwan. So this woman before them was the leader of the Rose of Death. It was their first time meeting her. Luying, Yi Wanwan suddenly called. Luying nodded in response. From this moment on, the Fearless Alliance is announcing it will declare war on the Rose of Death, the kind that won't cease until one side is dead, Yi Wanwan declared with a serious expression. Whether it was the higher-ups from the Fearless Alliance or the higher-ups from the Rose of Death, they were dumbfounded. What freaking game was this? The Fearless Alliance was declaring a life-or-death war on the Rose of Death. Just what was their president playing at? Didn't both the Fearless Alliance and the Rose of Death belong to her? If a war was declared, wasn't it the same as fighting herself? Sis Fong, what do you mean? Big Dipper looked at Yi Wanwan in incomprehension. The literal meaning, Yi Wanwan replied. Before Big Dipper could respond, Lu Ying suddenly stood up. From today onward, the Rose of Death is at war with the Fearless Alliance. Within half a day, news of the Fearless Alliance and the Rose of Death at war with each other rapidly spread throughout the independent state. All the major factions in the independent state started paying attention to this inexplicable war between the Fearless Alliance and the Rose of Death. The Rose of Death. Which Rose of Death? Is it that world-class power Rose of Death? How's that possible? If it was really that Rose of Death, news of them would have burst everywhere already. Moreover, why did the Fearless Alliance have to declare war on that old Rose of Death? Are they suicidal? Is that even a question? It must be some new emerging power, and the leader is probably an admirer of the old Rose of Death, so they named their group the Rose of Death too. Strange. How did a new minor faction like the Rose of Death suddenly become enemies with the Fearless Alliance? The Fearless Alliance's own strength is frighteningly fearsome already, and it recently announced it would become Prison's fourth core faction days ago. All the groups in the independent state couldn't understand the Rose of Death's suicidal behavior and simply treated it as a show. Some factions believed that the Rose of Death was merely impulsive. There was no way they would really start fighting. It probably wouldn't be long until they knelt in front of Bai Feng to kowtow and apologize profusely. You have to provide funds and forces. In the afternoon of the fourth day, the elderly man from the direct line visited the Fearless Alliance again. Yi Wanwan received the elderly man in the conference room. Heh. President Bai, I remember we previously signed a war treaty, right? The elderly man asked. When Yi Wanwan heard that, the corners of her lips turned up and she nodded. Of course I haven't forgotten. The direct line honors promises, and I naturally wouldn't go back on my word either. Amen, then this is a little strange. The war treaty clearly states that the Fearless Alliance needs to announce it has established an alliance with the direct line within 3 days of signing the treaty. It has been 4 days now, but the Fearless Alliance is still immobile. Don't you think this is a little improper, President Bai? The elderly man asked. What are you saying, sir? Don't you know that the Fearless Alliance has declared war on a group? Yi Wanwan retorted with a faint smile. Oh. Are you referring to that admirer of the Rose of Death, President Bai? The group that's also called the Rose of Death, the elderly man said pensively. That's right. Yi Wanwan nodded hastily. President Bai, based on my knowledge, that Rose of Death was founded recently and can't compare to the Fearless Alliance in both finances or manpower. Moreover, what does the Fearless Alliance going to battle with the Rose of Death have anything to do with announcing your alliance treaty with the direct line? Elderly sir, that's not right. First of all, you're overly underestimating the Rose of Death. Although they're still a young group, they're swimming in money and had a large number of experts join in a short amount of time, so their scope isn't inferior to the Fearless Alliance at all. Also, you said it yourself, elderly sir, the Fearless Alliance signed an alliance treaty with the direct line, and it's written in black and white in this treaty that this is a mutual alliance. If the direct line engages in a war, the Fearless Alliance will unconditionally support you without shirking. We'll provide money if we have money, and provide people if we have people. Similarly, if our Fearless Alliance goes to war, the direct line also has to unconditionally support us. Yi Wanwan smiled faintly. The elderly man became contemplative after hearing that. His fingers lightly tapped the surface of the table as he looked at Yi Wanwan. So, what are you saying, President Bai? Not much. Sure, the Fearless Alliance will immediately announce it has reached an alliance agreement with the direct line. Yi Wanwan then called First Elder into the conference room. President. First Elder stopped nearby and looked at Yi Wanwan. First Elder, immediately go and announce that the Fearless Alliance will unconditionally support the direct line from today onward, Yi Wanwan said. All right, President, this subordinate understands. First Elder nodded before promptly turning to the elderly man from the direct line. Then, since it's like that, we'll request the direct line to support us with money and manpower. Our war with the Rose of Death is about to begin. The elderly man wrinkled his brows. Was President Fearless acting slick with him? Right now, the direct line was preparing intensely for its war with the collateral branch. How could they have extra finances and manpower to help the Fearless Alliance fight against another faction? Moreover, back then, the direct line made the Fearless Alliance sign a war alliance treaty so that the Fearless Alliance would support their direct line. How come the Fearless Alliance was making the direct line provide money and strength to help them go to war instead? What cosmic joke was this? Thinking on your behalf, First Elder. Yi Wanwan shot First Elder a look. What are you saying? Does the direct line need us to remind them? Yi Wanwan slapped the treaty on the conference table. Everything is written clearly in this treaty. Are you saying direct line will be indifferent to the Fearless Alliance's struggle against the Rose of Death? This is a conditional contract that's directly managed by the Arbitration Council. You're too disrespectful, First Elder. First Elder nodded frantically and turned to the elderly man from the direct line with an apologetic expression. The President is right, this subordinate didn't think things through thoroughly. Our treaty is managed by the Arbitration Council, so direct line definitely won't sit by and do nothing. It's all this subordinate's fault for running my mouth before thinking it through. Yi Wanwan smiled faintly. Of course, say, our Fearless Alliance is quite lucky. If we didn't sign this war treaty, we'd have definitely spent a lot of money and people in this war with the Rose of Death. But it's great now that we have the direct line's help, we won't have to worry about expenses or manpower and can directly pulverize the Rose of Death to death. Right, you're correct, President. When a faction like us fights a war, we're fighting with money. Now that we have the direct line providing money and strength, First Elder added seriously. Yi Wanwan waved her hand and interrupted, First Elder, why are you so chatty? Hurry and announce it. After we've announced it, we can attack the Rose of Death. Yes, this subordinate will leave now. After we announce it, the conditions of the treaty will officially go into effect. After saying that, First Elder turned to leave. The elderly man from the direct line suddenly stood up. Wait. First Elder stopped and turned around, looking at the other elderly man in confusion. Elderly sir, what is it? Is there a problem? Yi Wanwan asked curiously. Ha, the elderly man chuckled lightly and answered, there's no hurry to make an announcement. Yi Wanwan immediately shook her head. How could there be no hurry? You don't feel hurried, elderly sir, but I feel hurried. We have to announce it, we're waiting to go to war. No hurry, the elderly man quietly replied. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Yi Wanwan turned to First Elder. What are you standing around for? Quickly go and announce it. All right, President. The elderly man from the direct line interjected, it's like this, President Bai. Since the Fearless Alliance is busy these next few days, you can take care of business first and make the announcement after it's taken care of. Yi Wanwan frowned deeply and looked at the elderly man with displeasure. Say. Don't tell me the direct line is unwilling to provide money or people. It's written clearly in our treaty that our cooperation is mutual. We will support the direct line, and the direct line will also support the Fearless Alliance. How come the direct line is cowering when the Fearless Alliance needs to fight a war? You're the direct line, no? Isn't that improper? The elderly man answered, President Bai, you've misunderstood my meaning and the direct line. This war treaty is managed by the Arbitration Council, so we wouldn't dare to not fulfill the terms. If President Fearless really wants the direct line to interfere and help, that's fine. It's just that we were thinking on behalf of President Bai and the Fearless Alliance's reputation. Thinking on our behalf? Yi Wanwan propped her chin up. What are you saying, elderly sir? What trick are they playing? The elderly man from Direct Line nodded at Yi Wanwan and chuckled. President Bai, the Fearless Alliance is at least a top faction in the independent state, am I correct? Yi Wanwan replied, of course. Sir, if you ask about the Fearless Alliance or mentioned Bai Feng's name, children would start crying. Exactly. The Fearless Alliance and President Bai have a thunderous reputation in the independent state. There isn't anyone in the independent state who doesn't know about you. What is the Rose of Death in comparison? Not only are they a knockoff group, but they also haven't been around for that long. In a war between the Fearless Alliance and the Rose of Death, everyone knows the Rose of Death is seeking their own deaths and trying to hit a rock with an egg. If the Direct Line rashly interferes at this time and provides money and support, so what if it's a crushing victory? At that time, everyone in the independent state would gossip and say that not only did the Fearless Alliance bully a newly founded knockoff group, but they also made the Direct Line join. It wouldn't be good if that got around, right? Yi Wanwan pursed her mouth. So what? I don't care. The elderly man from Direct Line, actually, President, this subordinate thinks the Direct Line is right. If the Direct Line interferes, we'd humiliate ourselves even if we won, First Elder interjected. Oh. It's really humiliating. Yi Wanwan repeated. President, we're the strong bullying the weak to begin with. If we make the Direct Line join too, First Elder looked a little embarrassed. That's right, that's right. The elderly man from Direct Line smiled faintly. What First Elder is saying is what I'm trying to express. It's not worth it. Yi Wanwan rubbed her chin and mulled over this for a long time before finally nodding. Fine. It's really not worth it if it's as you both say. It's rather humiliating. Though I don't care whether it's humiliating or not. However, while I don't care about shame, the Direct Line has to worry about shame, right? Then we'll hold off on that, and we'll eradicate the Rose of Death ourselves. Ha! Even if the Fearless Alliance attacks on your own, the Rose of Death will definitely be eradicated within 3 days, the elderly man from Direct Line said. I'll destroy them in 2 days at most, Yi Wanwan refuted in good humor. Alright, then I wish you great success, President Bai, and I won't disturb you anymore. After saying that, the elderly man stood up and left. Outside the Fearless Alliance, the middle-aged man who came with the elderly man from the Direct Line frowned and said, Bai Feng is clearly up to something. She's intentionally delaying things. The elderly man snorted and aloofly said, if she wants to delay things, let her delay. I'd like to see what kind of tricks she can play. The Alliance Treaty is directly managed by the Arbitration Council, so it's useless to fight it regardless of how slick she is. At the same time, the war between the Fearless Alliance and the Rose of Death had erupted. The first battle took place in the northern region, and Big Dipper was in charge. However, the battle didn't last 2 hours before the advancing troops led by Big Dipper fell like a landslide and surrendered without much resistance. 1 day later, the main battle between the Fearless Alliance and the Rose of Death also started. The Fearless Alliance's side was led by Yi Wanwan personally while the Rose of Death's side was led by a middle-aged man named Liao Chen. The Fearless Alliance and the Rose of Death had just engaged when the Fearless Alliance's main force crumbled and was forced to retreat. This situation stupefied every faction in the independent state. Madame and Patriarch Nia originally intended to dispatch some fighting forces from the Nia family to assist the Fearless Alliance but were solemnly rejected by Yi Wanwan. Prison S4 factions are all defeated, trepidation-filled Yi Wanwan. If the Nia family suddenly meddled in this, it would be awful. How would she keep acting out this show? To make things realistic, Yi Wanwan didn't inform anyone about her plan, including Azura and Prison's other 2 core factions. However, what Yi Wanwan didn't expect was the way it evoked the attention of everyone in the independent state despite it being an obvious pretend fight. Was the Fearless Alliance's reputation that great? In truth, it wasn't the Fearless Alliance's fame that attracted much attention. The main reason for the sudden interest was the knockoff group, the Rose of Death. That name alone was enough. Everyone wanted to see who was arrogant and egoistically enough to name their faction, the Rose of Death, and wanted to watch the Fearless Alliance pulverize this knockoff group. On the battleground, the elites of the Fearless Alliance and the members of the Rose of Death were fighting intensely. Any bystander wouldn't be able to differentiate one side from the other. Fuck me. Attack freaking lighter. You're beating my head with a stick and you're still using that much force. You're freaking getting real with me, aren't you? I'll really hit back, alright? At this moment, Big Dipper and 7 Star joined the fight. Big Dipper had just entered the altercation when he was instantly kicked by little Lolita from the Rose of Death. Big Dipper's face turned ghastly pale, and he started spitting out a large volume of blood from his mouth. Little Lolita, 7 Star glanced at Big Dipper, who had fallen to the ground and was spurting blood from his mouth. It's too much. Brothers, hurry and run. The Rose of Death is too strong. We can't win. Immediately, Big Dipper stood up like nothing happened and slapped the dust off his body before shouting to his fellow members. After saying that, he immediately fled to the rear. Read more chapters at List Novel. The members of the Fearless Alliance looked at each other and promptly fled as well. The leader on the Rose of Death's side, Liao Chen, was rendered speechless. Even if they were acting, couldn't they act a bit more realistically? He wasn't asking for much, just a teeny bit more realistic acting would do. Big Dipper was lightly kicked but spat blood for a whole freaking minute. This was a freaking joke. On the Fearless Alliance's side, Yi Wanwan sat with her ankle on her knee and nodded in satisfaction as she watched the battle. However, before Yi Wanwan could communicate with Liao Chen, she suddenly caught sight of Azura's group. Sweat drenched Yi Wanwan's body in an instant. Ajio. Yi Wanwan hastily dialed Si Yihan's number. Si Yihan's voice was emitted from the phone. Don't mess this up. We're acting. Yi Wanwan hurriedly said. There's a mission today. They're just passing by, Si Yihan replied. Mission. Passing by. So I'm being delusional, huh? Is he really my man? Like he said, Azura really was just passing by. Azura traversed through the battleground and left without turning back, as though they didn't see anything. However, this scene took on a different flavor in the eyes of many leaders of the independent state. Fuck me. Who the heck is the Rose of Death? Aren't they too freaking strong? Even Azura's main fighting force was instantly defeated. Just what's going on? Hold on, I think I also saw Heavenly Hatred in Slaughter's Gate. My god. The Rose of Death instantly defeated the Fearless Alliance, Heavenly Hatred, Azura, and also Slaughter's Gate? They couldn't win a 4-against-1 battle. How long has it been? Must take full responsibility for the Fearless Alliance, it's over. The 4 core factions of Prison were instantly crushed by the Rose of Death and utterly defeated. Then, could it be, it's not a knockoff? That Rose of Death is really the old Rose of Death. Within half a day, the Rose of Death had resurrected and managed to defeat the 4 core factions of Prison like breaking off a stick from a dead tree. Did we see things wrong? Maybe Azura was just passing by. Passing by. Bullshit. Are you an idiot? What's the relationship between Azura and the Fearless Alliance? President Fearless and Lord Azura even have a child together, so of course he was bringing Heavenly Hatred and Slaughter's Gate over to help the Fearless Alliance but couldn't win. Half a day later, the Fearless Alliance declared its defeat. Another half a day later, the Rose of Death announced all of the higher-ups and elites of the Fearless Alliance surrendered and transferred into the Rose of Death. Now, the Fearless Alliance turned into an empty shell. At the same time, Yi Wanwan led an empty-shelled Fearless Alliance and announced she would unconditionally support the Direct Line. Aside from the unconditional support for the Direct Line, Yi Wanwan also announced she'd go to the Arbitration Council and sue the Direct Line. The Fearless Alliance and the Direct Line clearly signed an alliance treaty and promised unconditional mutual support for each other. However, during the war between the Fearless Alliance and the Rose of Death, the Direct Line kept making excuses and was unwilling to provide assistance, which is what led to the Fearless Alliance's defeat. The direct line didn't strictly adhere to the terms of the alliance treaty, so they must take full responsibility for the Fearless Alliance's defeat. At the direct line's branch, the expression of the elderly man from the direct line was so dark that ink could drip from it. He never expected the Fearless Alliance to be shameless to this extent. What a nice move of substituting a raccoon for the crown prince. Although the direct line didn't have any evidence, the elderly man knew that the knockoff Rose of Death had to be a part of the Fearless Alliance and the two groups were merely acting. The Fearless Alliance intentionally pretended to be no match for them and were defeated, so all the higher-ups and elite members of the Fearless Alliance surrendered and were absorbed into the Rose of Death, leaving behind an empty shell in the Fearless Alliance. And the president of the Fearless Alliance, Bai Feng, was extremely shameless. She brought the hollowed-out Fearless Alliance with her and announced her support for the direct line. What purpose did the direct line have for the support of an empty shell? Not only that, but she was actually suing the direct line at the arbitration council and claiming that the direct line didn't help, so they had to take full responsibility for the Fearless Alliance's defeat. At that moment, the elderly man from the direct line wanted nothing more than to mangle Yi Wanwan into pieces. However, what was most headache-inducing wasn't President Fearless supporting the direct line with an empty shell in tow, it was them suing the direct line at the arbitration council. They signed a treaty with the Fearless Alliance, and the treaty clearly stated the cooperation was mutual. If the Fearless Alliance was engaged in a war, the direct line must also help. This was the direct line's responsibility. However, who could have expected the Fearless Alliance and the knockoff Rose of Death to be acting? The mighty Fearless Alliance crumbled in defeat within a day. Half a day ago, the elderly man, who had been constantly observing the battle between the Fearless Alliance and the Rose of Death, had detected something was amiss and intended to immediately lead people to support the Fearless Alliance due to the terms of the alliance treaty. However, the Fearless Alliance was defeated too freaking fast. It didn't give them any time to obey the terms of the alliance treaty. President Fearless, the elderly man from the direct line, fumed with rage between gritted teeth. You're too shameless. Chapter 2209. Did she still want her damn pride? The elderly man from the direct line wore a dark expression on his face. Not only did President Fearless leave the hollowed-out Fearless Alliance for the direct line, but she was also taking the direct line to court at the arbitration council. Did she still want her damn pride? At that same moment, in the Nye residence, in the living room, Madame and Patriarch Nye were beaming with joy. Who would have expected the knockoff Rose of Death to be a pretense? It was a second cloak used by their daughter to cover the Fearless Alliance. Worryless, your scheme was deployed too cleverly, Patriarch Nye praised Yi Wanwan joyously. In order to rescue them from the direct line, Yi Wanwan had no choice but to pretend to agree and sign an alliance treaty with the direct line. However, a war occurred between the Fearless Alliance and the knockoff Rose of Death, and the Fearless Alliance was defeated and forced to surrender. As a result, all of the Fearless Alliance's power was transferred to the knockoff Rose of Death. This way, it wouldn't be a problem for Yi Wanwan to give the entire, hollow Fearless Alliance to the direct line, let alone saying the Fearless Alliance would support direct line. Aside from that, Yi Wanwan also got leverage on the direct line and would sue the direct line at the arbitration council now, the charge being that the direct line didn't adhere to the terms of the alliance treaty. Madame Nye was filled with pride as she looked at Yi Wanwan. Just how did her daughter's mind develop? How did she think of such a scheme? But Worryless, you must be more careful in the future. The arbitration council isn't to be taken lightly. If the direct line gains leverage on you and retaliates, the consequences would be inconceivable, Patriarch Nye warned Yi Wanwan. Yi Wanwan nodded at once. She would prudently treat the arbitration council and wouldn't dare to be careless in the slightest. Say, don't you think this direct line is a bit dumb? They were led in circles by our daughter, Patriarch Nye joked with Madame Nye. Madame Nye glanced at her husband. How are they dumb? If it was you, would you have predicted Worryless to pull this trick? The cicada shed its carapace, substituting a raccoon for the crown prince, finding a loophole in the alliance treaty and turning the tables back on the direct line. If it were me, I really wouldn't have predicted it, Patriarch Nye replied. Exactly. So what do you mean the direct line is dumb? It was clearly Worryless who's too clever. She's so similar to her brother when he was younger, Madame Nye said. At the mention of nameless Nye, Patriarch Nye's expression dropped instantly. Don't talk about that damn punk. He never has any discipline. Dad, Mom. Yi Wanwan looked at her parents and asked, just who are the Arbitration Council? Patriarch Nye took a sip of tea before explaining, the Arbitration Council is a council that's above the 12 independent states and is considered the 12 independent states' supervisor and judge. Both the abolishment and establishment of the 12 independent states' laws need to pass through the Arbitration Council. Let's put it this way, any leader or overlord is under the governance of the Arbitration Council. The direct line and the collateral branch might be considered the independent states' strongest factions, but they're nothing when they meet at the Arbitration Council. Without rules, nothing could be done. And the existence of the Arbitration Council was the law, and every member of the 12 independent states had to obey them. That fearsome, huh? Yi Wanwan looked pensive. Your brother, nameless Nye, caught the eyes of the Arbitration Council, and they wanted your brother to become a consultant, but your brother was unwilling to go. So infuriating, Patriarch Nye said. Chapter 22:10 Acted overkill, what's a consultant? Yi Wanwan was intrigued. In the 12 independent states, the Arbitration Council recruits a consultant from every state. To put it plainly, their responsibility is to report their state's situation to the Arbitration Council, Patriarch Nye replied. How does the Martial Arts Union compare to the Arbitration Council? Yi Wanwan asked. Madame Nye smiled. Worryless Nye, the Martial Arts Union is merely one individual faction. In truth, every state has a group that's similar to the Martial Arts Union, and this kind of group is simply an imitation of the Arbitration Council. Understanding finally dawned on Yi Wanwan after listening to Madame Nye's explanation. In other words, the Arbitration Council was the authentic version while groups like the Martial Arts Union were merely pirated copies. Worryless, keep working hard and maybe one day, you'll become our state's consultant for the Arbitration Council. Right now, out of the 12 independent states, only our state doesn't have a consultant, Patriarch Nye said cheerfully. Yi Wanwan felt her head swelling. Her martial arts achievements definitely couldn't compare to her elder brother, nameless Nye. Even though her intelligence was higher, it was only artificially forced higher by her shamelessness. People talked about the Arbitration Council as such a high-end and classy entity, so they probably wouldn't care for a shameless person like her, right? After eating dinner with Patriarch and Madame Nye, Yi Wanwan drove back to the Fearless Alliance. The current Fearless Alliance had turned into an empty shell and only a handful of people remained. Even Great White and Virus were moved to the Rose of Death's headquarters. Sis Feng, you're finally back. A young man, whose entire body was covered in gauze and who walked with a limp, appeared next to Yi Wanwan. Who are you? Yi Wanwan was bewildered. Me. Sis Feng, it's me. I'm Big Dipper. Can't you recognize my voice? Big Dipper hastily said. Who? Big Dipper. Yi Wanwan was dumbstruck as she stared at Big Dipper. It had only been a few hours, so how did this guy end up like this? Who beat you? Yi Wanwan asked. No one beat me. I purposefully dressed like this. Our scouts told us that the old geezer from the direct line is coming again, so I quickly made myself look more sorrowful or else they won't believe us. Big Dipper said. Yi Wanwan immediately gave Big Dipper a thumbs up and nodded. Nicely done. Of course, Sis Feng. Big Dipper snickered. Read more chapters at List Novel. Come, let's go and meet that old man, Yi Wanwan said. In the conference room, Yi Wanwan led the limping and gauze-covered Big Dipper inside the conference room. The elderly man and several members of the direct line were situated in the room already. When the elderly man saw Yi Wanwan, he smiled. President Bai, is there any meaning to the game you're playing? Game? Yi Wanwan looked at the elderly man. What do you mean? How am I playing? President Bai, we'll ignore the other things. but the Fearless Alliance couldn't even defeat a newly founded knockoff group. And you were destroyed by them instead? Yi Wanwan nodded. If we can't win, we can't win. What can we do? Look at him, see how beaten up he is. Yi Wanwan pulled Big Dipper toward her. It hurts. It hurts. I couldn't win, ouch. They're strong, endless wails came from Big Dipper's mouth. Yi Wanwan, this is a bit of a freaking overkill. Chapter 22:11 Dawn, dismantle my stage. The elderly man from Direct Line was so incensed he couldn't talk. He originally thought Bai Feng was merely dragging things out for a few days. Who would have expected her to have thoughts of such a damaging move, causing him to be in a completely disadvantageous position and suffer a double loss? Yi Wanwan sat with her legs crossed on the chief's seat in the conference room and coldly looked at the infuriated elderly man from the Direct Line. Wasn't this old guy too naive? Did he really think the Nye family was such an easy target? Just watch. I'll definitely avenge my brother. The elderly man darkly looked at Yi Wanwan and said, President Bai, aren't you too naive? Do you really think your tacky and lousy methods can deceive everyone? Yi Wanwan raised her brows. Tacky, lousy methods. Then what are you, the person tricked by my lousy methods? You, hostility flared in the elderly man's eyes and he yelled fiercely, Bai Feng, do you think the entire independent state is blind? Or do you think the arbitration council is this easy to fool and they believe your nonsense? Yi Wanwan smiled at him like he was a fool. This old geezer might hold an enormous amount of power in the independent state, was an important character in the Direct Line, and possessed outstanding martial strength and tactics, but he was underestimating the impact of a certain weapon. This weapon was public opinion. This was the greatest weapon she learned from China's entertainment industry. Public clamor could confound right and wrong, and defamation could destroy a person. Right now, everyone in the independent state knew the Fearless Alliance was defeated by the Rose of Death, and no one would believe the one-sided story from the Direct Line. Moreover, thanks to her baby, her last suspicion might be dissipated. If the Fearless Alliance wasn't trustworthy, what about Azura? Slaughter's Gate? Heavenly hatred? Hence, even if the Arbitration Council investigated this matter, this was the only result they'd obtain. Clearly, the elderly man from the Direct Line was also aware of this point. He was cursing Yi Wanwan's vileness and shamelessness when footsteps were heard outside the door. The elderly man's subordinate knocked and opened the conference room door with several people in tow. The newcomers were Si Yihan, Jiang Lihan, and Xie Qianchuan. Why are Ajio and those two here? Yi Wanwan reflexively glanced at the elderly man from the Direct Line, her heart skipping a beat. These three mustn't have a slip of tongue. Especially Jiang Lihan. When the elderly man from the Direct Line saw the newcomers, he immediately received them excitedly. Lord Azura, Gang Leader Jiang, Gang Leader Xie, perfect timing. The three of you are reputable characters in the independent state, so don't tell me you'll also utter nonsense like a certain shameless rascal. That day, your people were merely passing by, so how could they have been defeated by the Rose of Death? These three mammoths were different from the Fearless Alliance. They might be vicious but they still retained their pride and absolutely wouldn't employ such shameless and despicable methods. Yi Wanwan immediately warningly glared at the trio. Damn, you better not dismantle my stage at a time like this. When the trio received Yi Wanwan's, everyone must work as one and act shamelessly at this critical time, warning gaze, their expressions turned complicated. Xie Qianchuan looked at the elderly man from the Direct Line then Yi Wanwan before scratching his nose and turning to Si Yihan. As for Jiang Lihan, he had a gut of fury simmering in him. Originally, he was perfectly fine and lazing at home when suddenly, the outside world was madly saying that his heavenly hatred and prison was defeated by some knockoff Rose of Death group that came from who knew where. Chapter 22:12 Have something like integrity. The rumors sounded so realistic and claimed they were beaten to the point of pissing their pants in terror. This was the perfect example of getting into trouble even though he was sitting at home and minding his own business. Hence, he came here to seek retribution from Yi Wanwan. Damn! Aren't you too shameless? Jiang Lihan shouted angrily. The elderly man turned joyous. You heard it, by phone. Gang leader Jiang has spoken already. It's clearly you. Before the elderly man could finish speaking, the quiet Si Yihan fixed his cufflinks and nonchalantly interrupted him. Elder Shui, back then, it was you who determined the treaty, but now, not only did you breach the contract and stand by without doing anything, but you've also distorted the truth deliberately. Aren't you too shameless? I'm afraid that will damage the direct line's image. When Si Yihan finished saying that righteously, not a single sound could be heard. Jiang Lihan's jaw dropped to the floor and Xia Qianchuan's eyes also shot open in shock, and even Yi Wanwan was dumbfounded. As for Elder Shui, he lost the ability to breathe, his face swelling red as he scrambled for something to say. He seriously never expected Lord Azura to actually speak such unreasonable words. Elder Shui, you. Lord Azura, you, the mighty leader of Azura, are actually acting like this despicable scoundrel. Elder Shui, will meet at the arbitration council. Show him out. Big Dipper was startled for a moment before quickly responding and leading his subordinates to escort the guests out. After the direct line group left, Yi Wanwan immediately pounced toward her darling with sparkling eyes and a holler. Baby, why are you so awesome? Read more chapters at List Novel. Calm. The man's gaze softened the instant the girl entered his arms. He reached out and indulgently patted her head. Jiang Lihan simply couldn't believe this, and outrage filled his body. He shakily pointed at Si Yihan and shouted, Damn, Ajo, what's wrong with you? If you've been kidnapped, blink your eyes. Si Yihan coldly glanced at him. Jiang Lihan was rattled. You're freaking marked by the company you keep. Look at how this woman has changed you. I really never expected you to have such a lack of integrity. I've misjudged you. Yi Wanwan kissed Si Yihan on the cheek before peering at Jiang Lihan. TSK, I also never expected you'd be as naive as that old man, Jiang Lihan. You actually thought my baby would still have something like integrity after being with me for so long? Can I interview you? Just what were you thinking? Originally you thought you just looked ugly and lacked good looks, but didn't expect you to also lack intelligence. Veins bulged on Jiang Lihan's forehead, and he immediately erupted. Damn, who are you freaking calling ugly? So out of all the things I said, this guy only paid attention to me calling him ugly. Damn girl, come here. Come here and tell me. Who are you calling ugly? Look at my face and say it again. Jiang Lihan had completely forgotten he was arguing with her about who was shameless and was fixated on the issue of his face. However, Yi Wanwan had no care for him anymore, and all of her attention was glued to Si Yihan. Ajo, thank you. It wasn't until later that she realized how meaningful Si Yihan's visit was. If it weren't for him, her plan might not have been so successful. Now, he even tossed aside his integrity for her. Si Yihan narrowed his eyes. I'll give you another chance. Yi Wanwan grinned and obediently corrected herself, Moi. Love you the most. Chapter 22:13 Disguises litter the ground and paramours fill the world. When Jiang Lihan saw how Si Yihan was utterly bewitched by that female bandit, Yi Wanwan, he nearly reduced his teeth into powder from how hard he ground them. Damn! I finally remember who you are. Aren't you that little girl from Azura's restricted area back then? Jiang Lihan suddenly recalled the past. Yi Wanwan stared at the sky, feigning ignorance. Huh? Azura's restricted area? What restricted area? Jiang Lihan glared at her. Stop pretending with me. I'd recognize you even if you turned into ash. Yi Wanwan rolled her eyes at him, speechless. She simply remarked, Ajo, why would you have such an ugly friend? And this guy suddenly remembered her now. What an oddball. With old and new grudges welling up, Jiang Lihan instantly disliked her even more. He immediately sprinted towards Si Yihan and solemnly said to him, Ajo, didn't you say this girl was an ordinary resident who accidentally entered the restricted area? Didn't you say she was especially naive and innocent? How did she turn into the demoness? I swear, this girl is a lackey from the Fearless Alliance. 1 second, the president of the Fearless Alliance, bro flat top, the next second, the second miss of the Nya family, the second after that, and the demon instructor from the Scarlet Flames Academy a second later. Her disguises litter the ground and paramours fill the world. She's absolutely unreliable. Ajo, how could you believe her just like this? Yi Wanwan's blood boiled. Damn. What did he mean by her disguises littering the ground and her paramours filling the world, huh? Who would talk like him? Si Yihan sent the twittering Jiang Lihan a warning glance. Shut up. Jiang Lihan disgruntledly continued, Ajo, don't be bewitched by this woman's face. Have you forgotten how this woman cuckolded you? Do you seriously believe in a piece of lousy paper and believe some DNA test and think that nearly 5-year-old kid is your child? What if he's another man's, huh? Wouldn't you be raising another man's son for him then? Jiang Lihan. Yi Wanwan pulled back her sleeves and was about to beat up Jiang Lihan when a child calling, Mommy, suddenly came from the door. Baby Tang Tang. Tang Tang appeared to have just woken up and was standing by the door, adorably rubbing his eyes. When Yi Wanwan heard baby Tang Tang's voice, the rage on her face instantly disappeared without a trace, and she ran over to hug the little fellow with a bright smile on her face. Baby, why did you come here? Are you hungry? Sorry, Mommy was caught up in something and will immediately go eat with you. Yi Wanwan placed a smooch on her son's face as she spoke. Yi Wanwan then glanced at Si Yihan before giving Tang Tang a look. Baby, your daddy's here. Upon hearing that, the little fella finally looked at Si Yihan and childishly called, Daddy. Si Yihan grunted. Yi Wanwan nodded with content as she watched the father and son duo. Good baby, go on, let daddy hug you. The little fella who was normally incredibly sassy in front of Si Yihan immediately nodded obediently when he heard his mommy and pattered towards Si Yihan, extending his short little arms. Si Yihan looked at this son, who acted like a completely different person in front of Yi Wanwan and was cute and docile and obedient, and grew silent. Could there be a problem with his method of interacting with his son? A moment later, the man knelt down and picked up the little fellow with extreme gentleness. Jiang Lihan and Xie Qianchuan stared at the father and son duo, eyes wide and minds blank. Impossible. Jiang Lihan protested. Yi Wanwan glanced at the dazed Jiang Lihan. She nonchalantly crossed her arms across her chest and expressionlessly said, Come. Come on, Jiang, stare at my baby's face and say it again, who's my baby's real dad? Jiang Lihan looked at the child, then the adult version of Si Yihan, and seriously couldn't say these two weren't real father and son. He incredulously exclaimed, Shit. Ajo. This child, really is your son. They always thought Si Yihan was the least fond of females amongst the three of them and never expected he already had such a large son. Jiang Lihan thought of something and a realization dawned on him. I was wondering why you were so bent on staying here and wouldn't go back no matter what. It turns out it's because of this woman. You even have a child. Don't tell me you're planning to marry this woman. Jiang Lihan's words chafed Yi Wanwan. Of course. We're definitely going to get married. What, do you have objections? Si Yihan's eyes imperceptibly brightened. Jiang Lihan was somewhat surprised and turned to Si Yihan. Ajo, are you serious? What if your mom, Jiang Lihan, Si Yihan said. Interrupted by Si Yihan, Jiang Lihan could only sheepishly zip his mouth and couldn't say anything further. Xie Qianchuan cleared his throat and pulled Jiang Lihan. Enough already. Don't touch a sore spot. I said it before, I'm unrelated to her. Si Yihan's face was icier than ever before. Yi Wanwan couldn't help but grasp Si Yihan's slightly chilled hand. Although Si Yihan hid it well, Yi Wanwan could still sense something was off about his emotions. There were a scant number of things that could affect Si Yihan's emotions in this world. It seemed to be taboo to mention Si Yihan's mother to him. In truth, she speculated that Si Yihan probably didn't have a good relationship with his mother based on his experience. Yi Wanwan didn't want to bring up painful matters, so she never pressed about things related to his mother and only knew he had broken off his relationship with his mother. Judging from Jiang Lihan's tone, Si Yihan's mother appeared to not approve of her and Si Yihan's relationship. Yi Wanwan considered it. His mother previously disapproved probably because their statuses didn't match, but now that she had recovered her identity as the second miss of the Nye family, she should at least be a worthy match for the ancient Si clan, right? Yi Wanwan brushed away her chaotic thoughts. Anyway, Si Yihan said he'd severed his relationship with his mother, so his relationship with his mother was unrelated to them no matter what. Tang Tang lay on Si Yihan's shoulder and perplexedly blinked. Daddy's mommy? Yi Wanwan patted the little fella's head and changed the topic. Let's go. Daddy and mommy will take you to eat something yummy. The little fella instantly bobbed his head, his eyes shining. Okay. Seeing how the ship had already sailed for this family of three, Jiang Lihan looked agonized, as though his ripe cabbage had been dug out by a hog. Woman, you're seriously underhanded. Yi Wanwan spread her hands. You're flattering me. If you consider Xiaobing, Mantu, and popping candy underhanded, then sure, I'm really underhanded. The matchmaker god can testify that I really didn't use any underhanded methods, alright? Jiang Lihan chortled. Liar. Keep lying. If you didn't use any underhanded methods, don't tell me Ajio threw himself into your arms. Before Yi Wanwan could respond, Si Yihan's low voice was heard. Do you have any objections? Yi Wanwan gloatingly glanced at Jiang Lihan before jubilantly looking at Si Yihan. Si Yihan was silent for a moment. Wasn't everything moved out? Indeed, everything had been moved out of the Fearless Alliance and into the Rose of Death's headquarters, even ball pens and pen containers hadn't remained. No. We haven't had time to move the pots and pans in the kitchen yet. Big Dipper suddenly interjected. I came here today to move those pots and pans, actually. Since when was their Fearless Alliance stingy to this extent and have to move their pots and pans too? Couldn't they buy a new set? How much could that possibly cost? Sis Feng told me to move things earlier, but I forgot about it. You won't blame me, right, Sis Feng? Big Dipper asked with a smile. Yi Wanwan, forget about what I thought. No need. Si Yihan looked at Yi Wanwan. Come with me to Azura. Yi Wanwan wanted to agree, but on second thought, she shook her head. Right now, the Fearless Alliance and the Rose of Death hadn't finished merging. The elders and higher-ups of the Fearless Alliance and the higher-ups of the Rose of Death were already in a fiery tussle over the distribution of positions, and there were too many matters requiring her attention, so she definitely couldn't go have fun in Azura. Ajio, I still have things to do here, so it'll have to wait until everything's done, Yi Wanwan said after some thought. Si Yihan didn't say anything and lightly set Tang Tang down on the floor. He gently patted Tang Tang on the head. Daddy will leave now. Stay with mommy. Okay, Daddy. Tang Tang nodded firmly. Yi Wanwan pulled Si Yihan back. Ajio, I'm pretty busy here, so how about you take Tang Tang with you? I'll come over after I've finished taking care of things. Alright, Si Yihan agreed. Mommy, I can help. Tang Tang stared at Yi Wanwan, his eyes shining. Sorry, Tang Tang, go with Daddy for now, okay? And have Daddy cook you something yummy, Yi Wanwan apologized with a comforting smile. Tang Tang was silent for a long while before finally agreeing. Are you hungry? Si Yihan knelt down and picked Tang Tang back up. Tang Tang was quiet and glanced at Yi Wanwan before nodding and replying, I'm hungry. I want to see Daddy's cooking. Ajio, your son is so well behaved. Xie Qianchuan looked at Si Yihan with envy. Jiang Lihan was grumbling in his mind though, how could a child birthed by that woman be this well behaved? It's absolutely illogical. Soon, Si Yihan left the Fearless Alliance while carrying Tang Tang with Xie Qianchuan and Jiang Lihan in tow. Yi Wanwan was pleased by the sight of Tang Tang and Si Yihan getting along, and a grin spread across her face. Put me down. I can walk by myself. The second they walked out of the Fearless Alliance building, Tang Tang's expression changed, and he disdainfully ordered Si Yihan around. Si Yihan had two completely different sons depending on whether his mom was there versus when his mom wasn't there. After Tang Tang was placed down, he pointed at the restaurant up ahead. Daddy, let's go there to eat. Jiang Lihan was startled. Nephew, didn't you just say you wanted to eat your dad's cooking? Tang Tang shot Jiang Lihan a glance. What does it have to do with you, ugly freak? Anyone who bullies mommy isn't a good person. Jiang Lihan froze in his spot, his expression incredulous. What did this little bastard call me? Ugly freak. Was their whole family blind? Could they please visit the ophthalmologist? They were beyond cure already. He knew it. He knew that a child birthed by that woman absolutely wouldn't be some angel. As expected. Tang Tang, you can't talk about Uncle Jiang like that, Si Yihan expressionlessly said to his son. Tang Tang looked up at his dad. Daddy doesn't agree with mommy's opinion. Si Yihan turned silent instantly and spoke a moment later. I don't disagree, Jiang Lihan, this heartless, inverted world. Inside the Fearless Alliance, Yi Wanwan was clueless about the interlude that occurred between Tang Tang and Jiang Lihan and the others. She was currently walking around the building with Big Dipper. I can swear on my life that the entire Fearless Alliance has been emptied, Sis Feng. There's only a set of pots and bowls left in the kitchen, and we absolutely didn't leave anything else behind. Big Dipper told Yi Wanwan. Yi Wanwan nodded. There really didn't seem to be anything else movable left. At that time, they would sue Direct Line at the Arbitration Council and pull the Fearless Alliance back from the Rose of Death, saying she had to use a large sum of money to reclaim the Fearless Alliance back from the Rose of Death. That seemed plausible. Hold on, we haven't finished moving everything from our treasury yet. I remembered there's a giant table that's crafted from some extremely precious wood. Come back here with me in a few days and help me move it. Yi Wanwan said. That's right, that's right. Sis Feng has such a good memory, I almost forgot about it. Big Dipper nodded frantically. Yi Wanwan sneered. Nonsense, her memory could be called photographic for everything related to money. Some time later, Yi Wanwan and Big Dipper left the Fearless Alliance and headed to the Rose of Death's headquarters. Over the next 2 days, Yi Wanwan took care of a majority of the arguments and conflicts between the higher-ups from the Rose of Death and the Fearless Alliance. On the second day, a piece of news arrived from the Direct Line. Big Dipper pushed open the office door and sprinted inside. What are you doing? Don't you know how to knock? Yi Wanwan glanced at Big Dipper. She was having a discussion with First Elder. Sis Feng, you don't know, but I'm telling you, something big happened. Big Dipper yelled hastily. Read more chapters at List Novel. Calm. Yi Wanwan furrowed her brows lightly. Something big happened? What happened now? Yi Wanwan asked. Sis Feng, do you still remember Elder Shui from the Direct Line? Big Dipper asked. Rubbish. Yi Wanwan glanced at Big Dipper. It had only been a few days, so how could she have forgotten about him? Sis Feng, that Elder Shui fell gravely ill from his anger after leaving the Fearless Alliance last time. Now, he's lying in bed all day long. He'll probably be angered to death by you. Big Dipper said. Yi Wanwan was stunned. Elder Shui from the Direct Line fell gravely ill due to being angered by her. First Elder quietly glanced at Yi Wanwan. Their president did seem to be capable of that. In all of the independent state, he had never met someone as shameless as her. First in China, during their battle with Si Wutian, the president calmly called the police, and then, there was no, and then. He heard that the president obtained the white tiger seal on the island, because she made a bet with the owner of the white tiger seal. She bet that the other guy wouldn't dare to eat shit. The tricks she played with the Direct Line were particularly indescribable. Sigh, That elder Shui has lived gloriously all his life and is fairly reputable in the direct line. The people he befriends are all well respected, so he's probably never encountered someone like the president and isn't used to it. It's to be expected that he got ill from his fury, First Elder remarked with a faint smile.